Well, Iran knows what it's doing and what it wants out of the negotiations. The United States does not. It's the Trump keeps talking about that there is confusion on the Iranian side, that they don't know who's in charge, that they don't agree with each other. All he is doing is describing what the reality is on the U.S. side, because on the Iranian side, it's quite clear who's in charge. Everybody has a role to play. And it was Ghalibaf, the head of the legislature. He was the lead negotiator in the last round, but it didn't mean that Araghchi was being shoved aside. To the contrary, Araghchi remains the foreign minister and playing a very prominent role. And the notion that somehow the IRGC is calling the shots and Khamenei is out of the picture, that's not true. So, Araghchi went first, when he first went to Islamabad, was it last Friday or last Thursday, Friday, the expectation was that Witkoff and Kushner were going to jump on a plane, go over and meet with him, but he made it clear, no, I'm not here to meet with them at all. I'm here to talk to the Pakistanis. And so, again, reviewing with Pakistan, they basically gave them the same paper, the same 10-point document that had been presented 2 weeks previously, because it was read. When you read it again, it really hadn't changed anything. So that was for Pakistan to deliver that message to the West. And what was curious about that is Trump came out and said, "Oh yeah, they came back with we've had some movement. They're moving in the right direction," and they presented basically the same document. So Trump either wasn't remembering what they had read previously, or he was wanting to portray it in more positive terms now. Then Araghchi gets on a plane, flies to Oman, and has meetings with the sheikh there. Then he gets back on the plane. Originally, they said he was going to fly from there to Moscow or to Russia. But instead, he goes back to Pakistan. And again, the meeting between the two is described as very upbeat, very positive. But one of the things that comes out of it is Pakistan then basically downgrades security. It lifts security restrictions, which is, many interpreters said, okay, there aren't going to be any more negotiations right now in the foreseeable future with the United States, because with those security precautions eliminated, that means the U.S. wasn't coming. And then Araghchi flew from there to St. Petersburg and has literally started his meeting with Putin about an hour ago. So it was and the opening comments were very warm and friendly between the two leaders.
How do you see the Iran-Russia partnership, less formal than NATO but still strategic? And how would escalating the war, like targeting infrastructure, actually help Iran's position or benefit Donald Trump politically?
Yeah, no, all it does is make you feel good. I blew up all this stuff, and you get to claim that, they're devastated. Like, he has wiped out the Air Force, except Iranian planes are still flying. He has wiped out the Navy, except Iranian ships continue to sail on the Strait of Hormuz and into the Indian Ocean. So we've devastated their missile production. No, they haven't. So it is further attacks. They can be spun as being very effective. The West, the number of people in the West that have bought into the lies that have been told about how effective the U.S. bombing was. And I guess I'm fascinated, maybe on sort of an intellectual basis, about when you look at the war in Ukraine and the number of air operations, missile strikes, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, drone strikes that Russia has carried out in Ukraine over the course of the last 4+ years. I mean, it's an enormous amount. it dwarfs anything that Iran has fired at the U.S. forces in Israel, or that Israel and the United States have fired at Iran. And in this context, Ukraine is 1/3 the size of Iran. So I'm just, if from a standpoint of applying military force and getting an achievable outcome, such as a changing government or Iran saying we no longer want to fight, we give up, that's not going to happen because as you see, even a country like Ukraine can hang on, albeit suffering greatly, but can hang on and not collapse into a fetal position after suffering a week of bombing. So this is the U.S. What this war has exposed are the limitations of U.S. military power, both air power, maritime power, and certainly no ground forces. Ground forces become an impossible task.
Larry, given that ties between Russia and Iran seem to be strengthening, alongside growing coordination with North Korea and China's more cautious, behind-the-scenes role, do you think this shift helps Gulf countries grasp the reality of the situation, or would further escalation simply leave them too vulnerable to cope?
Well, yeah, look, the actual, if you want to call it the actual violence that's going to occur and change the face of the geopolitical state in the Persian Gulf, it's on the economic front. The full impact of the cutoff of 20% of the world's supply of oil, 25% of the world's supply of liquid natural gas. So there's a significant, I'm not sure what the percentage is on helium and sulfuric acid. And then 35% at least of the world's urea. That when the war started on the 28th, we didn't see an immediate cutoff because the way liquid natural gas and helium and oil are transported, they're loaded onto tankers. And so those tankers that were at sea, even though in theory we look and say, okay, they're not producing any more oil right now in Saudi Arabia that we can see significantly, or in Qatar or Bahrain. Nonetheless, there was still oil on the high seas that was headed to destinations. And those tankers travel at the speed of somebody riding a bicycle, like 10 kilometers per hour. So it takes a while for it to get to ports. And so when it started arriving at ports around the world, the prices people had been paying before for oil, it was like, say, $70 a barrel. Well, now that oil is coming in and they're having to pay $130, $150. In Singapore, they had recorded, like the second week of the war, $210 for a barrel of oil. And people need to keep in mind, you're going to hear them talking about what the paper price is on Brent futures, or WTI, which stands for West Texas Intermediate. There are futures paper saying, oh, it's worth, the oil's worth, say, $105 according to our paper. But the reality is that doesn't matter what you're trying to bet on the future. When the ship actually gets there and you pay for it, you got to pay what the price is in the actual market, which is much higher, 30 to 40% higher. My point is, now all of that oil that had been out there en route has been delivered, and there's no more ships loaded up behind them. We're done with that. And that means now the actual impact of shortages are going to be felt, and severely felt. And so now we're going to enter a stage of call it economic contraction, significant economic contraction. I think that'll unfold this week and into next week, which is going to put pressure on the United States from a standpoint of negotiation. Because it looks like one of the things that Iran was talking to Oman. Okay, we're going to be partners in controlling what goes in and out of the Persian Gulf, and we'll get paid. Both of us will get paid for it. We're going to, since we're the ones that have the most at risk. So Iran's working that out with Oman. Then it's talking to Pakistan, as well as having Pakistan convey to the United States, here's what Iran's willing to do with respect to the Strait of Hormuz to get it open so commercial traffic starts to go through on a more regular basis. And then he's now in St. Petersburg, Russia, meeting with Putin. And again, I think the status of the Strait of Hormuz is going to come up. The issue of getting out from under U.S. sanctions is going to be addressed. The release of frozen assets. All of that is going to be important because Iran is not just a strategic partner, or within being a strategic partner of Russia, Iran is an essential economic component because of its control, its role of being the north-south corridor that's going to allow goods to flow both from Russia down through Iran to the Indian Ocean, as well as products to come in from the Indian Ocean, go up through Iran, across the Caspian into Russia. So the economic, I guess what I'm saying is, whatever, military strikes could be renewed, but they're not going to accomplish anything strategic. It's simply going to further deplete already scarce missiles, precision strike missiles or precision strike munitions that the United States has, both missiles, glide bombs, cruise missiles, etc. I candidly think China is sort of sitting back, hoping that the United States does attack again, on believing that if they did so, it would further deplete U.S. military resources to such an extent that there would now be complete certainty that the United States could never attack China, at least not any time in the near to intermediate future.